I opened my eyes and realized I'd been transported into a trashy soap opera, occupying the body of a billionaire CEO. The scene was currently playing out the classic trope of the Cinderella cleaning lady entering the elevator. I looked up to find the girl clutching her chest, glaring at me with an accusatory look. "Sir, delete those photos you just took of me," she shrieked. It was a classic misunderstanding. In the original script, this was supposed to be the opening act of a grand romance. Suddenly, a flood of colorful comments exploded across my vision like a live stream chat. One user posted that they bet 50 cents he would loosen his tie in 3 seconds. Another predicted the line would be, "Girl, you are playing with fire. Move the camera to the left because I want to see him pin her against the elevator wall," one comment read. "I can't wait to see this cleaning girl work her way up to becoming the CEO's wife," said another. Someone else joked that the marriage license office was already on standby. "I am ready to donate 10 rockets to celebrate this couple," a viewer commented. "The CEO is about to fall for the only woman who dares to defy him." In the next moment, I scanned the scrolling text before looking down at her trembling hands and cheap plastic ID badge. I let out a cold laugh. Me? Fall for her? A woman who lacks even the most basic professional ethics? This is absolute nonsense, and she is incredibly loud. Why would a CEO like me ever be interested in a woman so simple she borders on being an idiot? I would have to be insane. While she watched in stunned disbelief, I reached out and pressed the intercom button inside the elevator. "Is this human resources?" There is a cleaner on the 18th floor named Lily. She is making baseless accusations of harassment and disturbing the peace. Issue a formal written warning and revoke her performance bonus for the month. If she steps out of line again, fire her immediately. The comments on the screen froze for a moment. Bonus revoqué? Hold on, this is definitely not how the script is supposed to go. Was I watching some kind of prank video? I could have sworn this was supposed to be a sugary romance. Why was I seeing this instead? This is getting messy, and the audience thinks I'm going to regret it later. They expect the CEO to eventually be on his knees begging for her to take him back. "James, you are really digging your own grave here," the comments said. I completely ignored the floating text. As I stepped out of the elevator, Lily remained frozen with her eyes wide, looking utterly baffled. The colorful comments continued to scroll past at a frantic pace. Just wait until he eats his words. The meaner he is now, the harder he will fall later. I'm just waiting for Lily to make her big comeback. He won't listen to us, and he'll pay the price. "James, you're going to be so sorry." I scoffed at the idea of regret or begging for mercy. If I had followed the original script, things would be very different. According to the original script, I was supposed to fall head over heels for this loud, boundary-crossing, and entirely unprofessional janitor. What followed was supposed to be a series of endless misunderstandings where she viewed me as cold and heartless. I was supposed to think she was ungrateful while we tormented each other. Then would come the classic twist where I suddenly realize I am in love with her. I would start a desperate pursuit, showering her with flowers, luxury cars, and houses. For her sake, I was expected to abandon billions in assets and my own dignity. I was supposed to wait outside her apartment in the pouring rain only for her to slap me and tell me to get lost. Then, I would shamelessly keep chasing her. Eventually, after a kidnapping orchestrated by Ava, I was meant to have an epiphany while she wept with joy. It would be a happy ending for everyone. I would hold this Cinderella in my arms as if she were my entire world. What a load of trash. I am James Miller, the head of the Miller Group. I am a shrewd, cold professional who built my success on the shoulders of giants. I have tripled the size of my family business, and I handle multi-million-dollar deals every single day. Every single decision I make impacts the livelihoods of thousands of employees. My time is worth a fortune every second. Why on earth would I waste my energy on something so trivial? Should I waste my life playing a game of cat and mouse with a janitor who doesn't understand basic office etiquette and falsely accuses her boss of harassment? Or should I focus on market expansion, major acquisitions, and driving technological innovation? This isn't even up for debate. Those pathetic, childish romance games only happen to brainless CEO caricatures in terrible TV shows. Those characters stomp on their own dignity and treat their careers like toys just to win over a woman who has nothing going for her except being kind and stubborn. In the real world, being kind and stubborn is just a polite way of saying someone is stupid and narrow-minded. It is the behavior of a desperate loser. People expect her to have some grand character arc or plot twist, but with her minimum wage salary and her only talent being clutching her chest and screaming, it is never going to happen. The moment I reached my desk, my phone began to buzz. I glanced at the screen and saw the custom ringtone for my mother. As soon as I answered, the comments on my vision flared up again. People were shouting that the big scene was finally here and that I was about to use the cleaning girl as a human shield. Some were joking that the marriage license office already had a desk waiting for us. Others were betting virtual gifts on the outcome. I leaned back in my leather chair and put the call on speaker. My mother's voice came through, sounding as overbearing as ever. "James, you're going to marry into the Bennett family next month," she declared. "Ava Bennett is a wonderful girl, and I will not hear a refusal." I immediately recalled how this was supposed to go in the script. In the original story, my fiancée, Ava, was deeply in love with me. However, the original James didn't care for her at all and used Lily as a shield to avoid his responsibilities. Under pressure from his family, he was forced toward an arranged marriage. He ended up dragging Lily to the courthouse to get a marriage license. They lived together in separate rooms and slowly fell in love. Meanwhile, Ava was supposed to turn into a bitter villain because her love was unrequited, spending her time trying to sabotage their relationship. The comments were hitting a fever pitch of excitement. Users were shouting that Ava was finally entering the scene and that we were about to start a classic trope. They expected me to slam the phone down and scream that I loved someone else and would never marry Ava. To the total shock of the audience watching my life, I replied with absolute composure, "Whatever you say, Mother. Where's Ava right now? If she is free, we might as well get the license today." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My mother sounded like she couldn't believe her ears. Even though Ava and I had grown up together, I had never shown any interest in the proud, elegant woman. She likely couldn't fathom why I had suddenly changed my tune. Only I knew that at this point in the story, Ava hadn't turned into a villain yet. She was wealthy, beautiful, and her family was even more influential than mine. Most importantly, she was completely devoted to me. When faced with a nearly perfect woman like her, why would I ever choose a janitor who earns minimum wage scrubbing floors? Am I the one who is insane, or is it everyone else? At that exact moment, the comment section went absolutely wild with confusion. People were asking why I wasn't running away as planned. They were looking for the cleaning girl and wondering if I had somehow mixed up the script. Some even complained that they had paid for a subscription just to see the drama. My mother's voice was actually trembling with excitement as she told me I wasn't allowed to take back my promise. I told her that of course I wouldn't. A merger between our two powerful families sounded like a fantastic business move to me. I twirled my pen and asked if Ava was already in the building. I even suggested going to get the marriage license right then. My mother laughed and said we should have an engagement party tonight instead, and she would start sending out the invitations. The comment section was in a total meltdown. People were demanding to know where the star-crossed lovers' rebellion was. They started calling the show a fraud and demanding refunds, claiming that the story had become unwatchable. Once I hung up, I went back to reviewing my corporate filings. Suddenly, my office door was slammed open, bouncing off the wall with a loud bang. Lily came charging into the room. Her eyes were red and her chest was heaving as she marched right up to my desk. "James, how could you take away my bonus?" she shouted. Her voice was trembling as she fought back tears, trying to maintain her composure. "Just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you can bully people like this," she cried. The comment section immediately came back to life. Everyone was shouting that the classic confrontation scene had finally arrived. "Finally, the cleaning girl is standing up to the boss," the comments read. Users were telling me to look up and admire her stubborn expression. They were thrilled that the story was finally getting back on track. "Stand up and pull your tie off already," one viewer demanded. Others were talking about how they were recording the screen in anticipation. They couldn't understand why I wasn't moved by her tears and joked about bringing the marriage license office to my door. I leaned back in my chair and remained perfectly still. I didn't even bother to look up at her. My fingers simply tapped a rhythmic beat against the polished mahogany of my desk. The only sounds in the room were her heavy breathing and the light tapping of my fingers. Outside of that, the colorful comments were flying across my vision at a blinding speed. The audience was losing their minds. "It is about to happen," they cheered. They were certain I was about to explode and started a countdown for the classic lines. They were practically begging me to say something dramatic. "Someone give a man a mic," a comment said. They wanted me to tell her she was playing with fire or that she had successfully caught my attention. They were desperate for me to play the part. I finally raised my eyes. My gaze was like a blade of ice that sliced through the noisy comments and landed directly on her face. There was no passion or anger in my eyes, only a cold, clinical scrutiny as if I were examining a broken piece of machinery. "Who gave you permission to enter my office?" I asked. Lily froze. Whatever rehearsed speech she had prepared seemed to get stuck in her throat. She likely expected me to scream at her or be moved by her spirit, but my question clearly caught her off guard. She stammered that she was there to discuss her performance bonus. "Barging in here without an appointment is a direct violation of company policy," I interrupted her. I spoke slowly, making sure she heard every word. "Did the front desk announce you? Did my assistant give you clearance? Is your name anywhere in my calendar for today?" The comments section went dead silent for a moment. People were baffled that I was bringing up appointments. They were telling me to wake up and asking if I really thought corporate procedure mattered right now. "I came here for a romance," someone complained. People were joking that we must be enemies and threatening to stop watching entirely. I ignored them and addressed the girl from the cleaning department. "I don't care who you are," I said, cutting her off again with a voice that was even colder. "Who gave you the right to invade the CEO's office? Have you even glanced at the employee handbook? Where is your basic professional etiquette? Who raised you to believe it is acceptable to just charge into a private office?" Lily was completely paralyzed. She stood there with her mouth agape, her eyes filled with confusion and a growing sense of panic. She had come prepared for a dramatic battle of wills, but instead, she found nothing but a wall of corporate coldness. Her lips moved as if she wanted to speak, but she couldn't find the words. The comments were losing it again. People were laughing about me giving an etiquette lesson to a cleaning girl. They were complaining that the script had gone off the rails and were still demanding the romantic cliches they expected. "Can we please get back to the original misunderstanding?" one user joked. Others were laughing at my strange focus, though some admitted they were starting to like this new direction. A few even agreed that she was being incredibly rude. I watched her squirm with an expressionless face, though I was secretly amused. I wonder what the audience was actually hoping for. Did they really think I would suddenly turn into a different person and start some trashy romance? Why would I ever be attracted to a woman with zero professional standards who doesn't even know how to knock? I picked up the desk phone and spoke with a level voice. "Security, this is the 18th floor. We have a cleaner named Lily here. Please escort her out. Her behavior is a violation of protocol. If she does this again, follow the company guidelines and terminate her employment immediately." Lily's face went completely white. It finally dawned on her that, to me, she wasn't a romantic interest. She was just an employee who had screwed up a problem that needed to be solved through official channels. It had absolutely nothing to do with love or feelings. Two large security guards appeared in the doorway almost immediately. They were polite, but their presence left no room for argument as they asked her to leave. Lily looked at the guards and then back at my cold, indifferent face before finally breaking down. Tears began to stream down her face. She stomped her foot and yelled that I was a total jerk. She covered her face and ran out of the office. The comment section was a disaster. People were shocked that I had called security and filed a formal complaint. They were all crying over her tears. "How can you be so heartless, James?" one user wrote. Others were complaining that this wasn't the romance they were promised. Some were so frustrated they threatened to stop watching the story altogether. A few people were laughing at the absurdity of the situation, while others told me I deserved to be alone. Some warned that my cruelty now would only lead to a bigger downfall later. They were convinced this was all just a setup for a major emotional payoff. All of this is going to come back to haunt you, James, they said. You'll be crying twice as hard later. Listening to these hysterical predictions was starting to get on my nerves. The idea of regaining her trust or making it up to her was laughable. Why would I want to impress a janitor who doesn't understand workplace rules and solves every problem by crying? It made no sense to me. I wasn't going to waste my time on someone just because she was good at causing trouble. Revoking a bonus and following disciplinary procedures is just basic management. It is the bare minimum required to run a company. Things like romance and heart-pounding moments are just a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. My time is extremely valuable. Every second needs to be used efficiently, and I have no interest in playing these childish games. Once Lily was gone, my office was finally quiet again. The comments were still flying by, filled with warnings of future regret and more demands for refunds. I ignored them completely because they were just noise. To me, it was just background static. I pulled out my phone and logged into the security cameras. It wasn't because I wanted to see Lily, it was just a long-standing habit of keeping an eye on my property. I swiped across the screen to pull up the feed from outside the janitorial lounge. Lily was leaning against the wall, but she wasn't crying anymore. Her head was down as her fingers flew across her phone screen. She didn't look hurt. She looked annoyed and confused. The comment section finally calmed down as the audience noticed her strange behavior. I zoomed in on the camera feed and turned up the audio. The microphone picked up her voice perfectly. "This isn't right," she muttered to herself. "Why isn't he following the script?" She was staring at her phone with a deep frown on her face. "I can deal with the elevator scene failing," she whispered. But that office confrontation was supposed to be a classic. How did it end with him lecturing me on corporate policy and filing a formal complaint? She ran her hands through her hair in frustration. Does he really have no feelings for me? That's impossible. According to the script, he should be fascinated by me by now. The comments section froze instantly, as if someone had hit the pause button on the world. After a few seconds of stunned silence, the screen was buried under a mountain of new comments. People couldn't believe what they had just heard. They were shocked to find out that she was following a script. She mentioned an original plot and a script, someone pointed out. The audience was overwhelmed by the revelation. They realized that she knew exactly what was supposed to happen and that she was the main character. "She's not cute anymore," a comment read. People were feeling sorry for me being kept in the dark, but then they realized I was watching her on the security feed. They were excited to see how I would react. It was a total script-breaking moment. People were worried because I had heard everything, and they expected me to be confused. But others told them not to underestimate me and to look closely at my face. I sat there in front of the monitor, completely expressionless but feeling surprisingly calm. It all made sense now. That was why her behavior had been so irrational. Her accusations and her dramatic entrance were all calculated. It wasn't just stupidity. She was following a script. She expected me to be charmed by her antics and to fall right into the romantic storyline she had planned. It was pathetic. Lily was still talking to herself on the screen, sounding increasingly anxious about my engagement to Ava. She kept saying that it was happening much faster than it did in the original story. Is this the butterfly effect because I deviated from the script? She wondered aloud. She started biting her nails nervously as her mind raced. She decided she couldn't allow the engagement to happen. If he marries Ava, what happens to my role as the lead? She asked herself. She clearly didn't want to lose out on my billions. She stood up with a look of pure, ruthless determination on her face. I have to get into that engagement party, she decided. She planned to cause trouble and force the plot back onto its original track. She pumped herself up, convinced that this was the pivotal moment of her story. "I'm going to take James back," she vowed. "My whole Cinderella story depends on it." The comment section was hysterical at the thought of her trying to crash the party. "Is she going to kidnap the groom?" Someone joked. People were telling her to wake up and get a grip on reality. It was fascinating to watch her try to rewrite the story in real time. "This is pure gold," one user said. They were focused on my calm expression as I watched her. Everyone knew that she was in trouble because I had heard every word of her plan. "He's going to be so mad," someone predicted, but others pointed out that the corner of my mouth was twitching. They realized I wasn't angry at all. I was actually struggling not to laugh. "This is going to be good," they cheered. They knew I would be ready for her tonight. To me, she wasn't a person anymore. She was just a malfunctioning plot device. "He isn't going to give her an inch tonight," the comments said. There would be no dramatic apologies or chasing after her. They were all excited for the real confrontation and couldn't wait for the chaos to begin. I watched Lily on the monitor, looking so full of herself as she planned her grand scheme. She was convinced she could manufacture a misunderstanding and win me back to save her pathetic little script. I shut off the feed and let the room go silent. The comments were still pouring in, with everyone placing bets on the showdown they expected at the engagement party tonight. I leaned back and tapped my fingers against the arm of my chair. She really believed she was the star of the show and that she could bend reality to her will. It was almost funny. Unfortunately for her, in my world, I am the one who holds the pen. No one else gets to decide how my story ends. Later that afternoon, there was a gentle, polite knock at my door. 3 soft taps. I told the person to come in, and the door swung open. Ava was standing there, looking absolutely stunning in a perfectly tailored outfit. She had a soft, flawless smile on her face, and her eyes lit up with genuine joy the moment she saw me. "James," she said softly. Her voice was gentle and filled with a hint of nervous excitement as she asked if she was bothering me. The comments section exploded again with excitement because the supposed villain had finally arrived. "Ava is on the scene," they cheered. "The fiancé is finally here, and look at the way she looks at him." They were disappointed that the cleaning girl wasn't there to create a scene, though. "I'm just waiting for the drama to start," one user wrote. Others were commenting on how beautiful Ava was and how much better she looked than the cleaning girl. They were starting to root for us as a power couple. I invited her to sit and set aside my work to pour her some water. There was no reason for me to be anything but kind to her. Ava stepped into the room and closed the door quietly behind her. Unlike Lily, she didn't barge in or make a scene. She didn't even rush to sit down, choosing instead to stand a respectful distance from my desk. She stood there with her hands folded, looking the picture of elegance. However, the way she looked at me was different than before. She seemed intensely focused on me. There was a sense of profound relief in her gaze, as if she had finally reclaimed something precious. She said my name again, and I could hear her voice tremble with emotion. "I just wanted to see you," she whispered. "It is so wonderful to see you again." Her words actually caught me by surprise for a moment. The comments were flying across my vision. People were confused by her dialogue, noting that something felt off about the way she was speaking to me. Ava took a shaky breath. I could see guilt and fear in her eyes, but also a strange sense of clarity. "James, I've been terrible to you in the past," she said. "I had this dream," she continued. "In it, I tried everything to make you love me, but it was never enough. I was so consumed by jealousy that I did things I'm not proud of. I turned into someone I didn't even recognize. I was mean and pathetic, and I didn't deserve to even stand in the same room as you." The comments section went into a total frenzy at her confession. "I'm so confused," one user wrote. "Why is the story changing again? Isn't this supposed to happen much later? Was it really all just a dream?" "Wait, does Ava know about the script too?" someone asked. The audience was losing their minds over the revelation. They were wondering how many characters were actually aware of the plot. What about James? Is he in on it too? They wondered. They were calling for the writer's head, claiming the story had completely lost the plot. Ava couldn't see any of this. She just kept her eyes on me and continued. "I was like a madwoman. I hurt you, and I hurt so many others until I eventually destroyed myself." Her eyes began to fill with tears, and though her voice was shaky, she seemed more determined than ever. "But I've woken up from that nightmare," she said. "I refuse to let my love turn into bitterness again. I won't let jealousy control me." She took a step closer to me, her gaze filled with genuine sincerity. I'm going to make the most of this second chance. I'm going to cherish you and work every day to be worthy of being your wife. I want to be someone who truly understands and supports you. James, please just let me love you the right way this time. The comments section was in total chaos. They were all convinced that she had been reincarnated and knew exactly how the story was supposed to end. She knows everything, they screamed. She actually admitted to being the villain in her past life. This is the craziest plot twist ever. Whoever wrote this is a genius, someone commented. People were wondering if she was really going to turn into a perfect wife. They were fascinated by the dynamic between a self-aware villain and a cold CEO. James, say something already, the comments begged. The room was so silent, I could almost hear the air moving. The only sound was Ava's quickened breathing as she stood there with tears shimmering in her eyes. I watched her while the comments continued to flash across my vision. The sincerity and resolve I saw in her eyes didn't look like an act. She seemed completely genuine. She was no longer the spoiled, erratic socialite I remembered. She was a woman who had clearly been through a lot of pain and was now determined to be a better person. This was getting interesting. On one hand, I had a janitor trying to force me into a scripted romance. And on the other, my fiancée was confessing her past sins and begging for a fresh start. I wondered how many other people in this world were following their own secret scripts. I looked into her hopeful eyes and gave her a small smile. Don't be late for our engagement party tonight, I told her. By 7 that evening, the ballroom at the Miller estate was glowing with light. The room was packed with the city's most influential people. Everyone who was anyone had shown up for the event. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, creating a vibrant atmosphere. Ava and I stood at the head of the room, graciously accepting congratulations from all our guests. She held onto my arm with an elegant smile and a steady gaze. The comments were going wild over how lavish the party was. They were clearly impressed by the scale of the event. "Where's the cleaning girl?" one user asked. They were all waiting for her to show up and cause a scene. They were desperate for some drama to break up the formal event. Will he defend his fiancée, or will it turn into a total disaster? Someone wondered. Another user bet that Lily would arrive any second. Right then, my head of security leaned in and whispered to me. "Sir, Lily has managed to sneak in," he said quietly. "She's disguised as a server and is currently lingering near the side hall. Should we remove her?" I swirled the ice in my glass and told him to leave her alone for now. I wanted to see exactly what kind of performance she had planned. He nodded and disappeared back in the crowd. Ava looked at me with a questioning expression. I just gave a small shake of my head to let her know everything was under control. She didn't push the issue, but I felt her grip on my arm tighten slightly. The audience didn't miss a thing. They were speculating about what the security guard had told me, and were convinced it had something to do with Lily. They could tell I was hiding something. He told them to leave her alone on purpose, a comment said. They were all excited for the show to start. Sure enough, it wasn't long before we heard a disturbance coming from the side of the room. Lily's voice rang out, loud and filled with fake panic. "Oh my God, isn't that James Miller?" she cried out so everyone could hear. "Who is that woman with him?" She was holding up her glowing phone as if she had some scandalous secret to share, but was pretending to be too timid to show it. A few of the guests started to gather around her, looking confused by her behavior. The comment section was on fire. People were cheering for the arrival of the classic framing trope. They were laughing at her performance and waiting to see how I would handle the situation. A guest asked what was happening. Lily's eyes were red as she spoke in a voice that was just loud enough to carry through the nearby crowd. "I work for the Miller Group," she claimed. "James took photos of me in the elevator without my permission and then threatened me. He told me he was in love with me." She stopped for dramatic effect and glanced over at Ava and me with a look of feigned innocence. The room filled with hushed whispers as the guests began to look between the three of us, wondering if there was any truth to her story. I could see curiosity and judgment on every face in the room. The comments were flying by, urging me to defend my honor and protect my fiancée. They were loving the drama of the situation. I noticed Ava's smile slowly disappear as she let go of my arm. I expected her to demand an explanation or to look humiliated in front of our guests. Instead, she marched directly toward Lily with a sense of absolute authority. The comment section went silent with anticipation as they realized Ava was taking matters into her own hands. Lily looked triumphant as she saw Ava approaching, convinced that her plan was working perfectly. She held her phone up and made her voice sound even more pathetic as she spoke. "Miss Bennett, look at the evidence for yourself," she said. James, Ava didn't even look at the phone. She stopped right in front of Lily, standing so close that their personal space was practically gone. Ava's gaze was like a razor. When she spoke, her voice was so clear and cold that it immediately silenced the entire room. "Lily," she said. Ava stared her down and told her to stop the act because it was cheap and disgusting. Lily looked like she had been slapped, her face frozen in utter disbelief as she asked what Ava meant. Ava gave her a cold smile and made sure her voice carried through the crowd. "Did you Photoshop those pictures or just find them on the internet? Do you really think anyone here is stupid enough to believe such a pathetic setup?" She took another step forward, completely dominating the space. "Do you honestly think no one knows the truth about what happened in the elevator? You made false accusations against the CEO and were formally disciplined for your behavior. Now you have the audacity to crash my engagement party, to spread more lies just to get back at James and humiliate me." Lily's face went white as a sheet, and her voice shook as she tried to claim she was being slandered. Ava laughed in her face, her eyes filled with nothing but contempt. "Your so-called evidence only proves how malicious you are. What else could it possibly show? Are you trying to convince people that James would ignore a perfect match like me just to harass a cleaner with zero professional standards? You're living in a fantasy world where you think your pathetic little games actually matter." Every word Ava said hit like a whip, and Lily looked like she was about to collapse. The comment section was going crazy, with everyone talking about how ruthless Ava was being. "She is a total queen," one user said. "She's tearing that girl apart without any mercy. Look at the look on the cleaning girl's face. It's priceless." Lily was in a total panic. She never expected Ava to call her out so publicly and expose her entire history. "You're lying," she shrieked, her voice sounding desperate and unhinged. "You're just jealous. James and I are the ones who belong together." "Shut up," Ava interrupted, her eyes turning as cold as ice. "Don't you dare speak his name like you know him. He is my fiancé and the CEO of the Miller Group. You're nothing more than a low-level employee on the verge of being fired. How dare you come here and try to drag his name through the mud?" She raised her chin, looking down at Lily with pure contempt. She called for security to remove the woman for spreading lies and disrupting the party. 2 guards moved in quickly. Lily completely lost it, screaming and struggling as they took hold of her. She kept shouting that this wasn't how things were supposed to happen. "I'm the main character," she screamed. "I'm the lead. James is supposed to love me. You're all just background characters. This isn't what the script says." The guards dragged her out of the room as she continued to rant like a madwoman. The comment section was silent for a moment before erupting in shock. Everyone was saying that the supposed lead had completely lost her mind. "What a massive twist," someone commented. "She just completely ruined her life in public. I love how James is just standing there with that cold expression. That counterattack was absolutely perfect. Where are all the people who thought he was going to beg for her back?" one user asked. "They joked that I looked like I wanted to make her disappear entirely." Within minutes, the party had returned to normal. Ava came back to my side, her composure completely regained as if nothing had happened. She leaned in and quietly asked if she had startled me. I looked into her bright eyes and saw a mix of genuine concern and a touch of pride in her own actions. I told her she had handled the situation perfectly, and she gave me an even warmer smile. As the party came to an end and the guests left, Ava and I got into the car. As the driver started the engine, the comment section was still buzzing about the confrontation they had just witnessed. "Game over for the cleaning girl," they cheered. They were all impressed by Ava's strength and were starting to root for us as a couple. They had completely abandoned the original script. We left the estate and headed onto the highway. The city lights flickered past the windows as Ava leaned her head on my shoulder and rested quietly. Suddenly, there was a loud bang and the car jolted violently. The tires screeched against the pavement as the driver slammed on the brakes, sending me forward into the back of the front seat. The comments went into a frenzy, speculating about a car accident or a kidnapping. They were convinced it was a kidnapping and were thrilled that the story was finally following a classic trope. Will the cleaning girl show up to save them? Someone asked, though others doubted she could do it. They were worried for Ava's safety. Suddenly, the car door was ripped open, letting in a blast of cold night air. Hands in black gloves reached into the car. They were powerful and had a clear target, which was Ava. I tried to move to protect her, but someone grabbed my wrist with a grip like iron and twisted my arm behind my back. A man with a raspy voice and the smell of alcohol on his breath told me not to move. They dragged Ava out of the vehicle. Instead of screaming, she remained perfectly calm, her eyes taking in everything around her. She yelled at me to stay still because they were armed with knives. The comments were in a panic. People couldn't believe how calm Ava was being. They were worried that I had been caught and that we were in real danger. I was pinned against the seat, forced to watch as they shoved Ava into an unmarked van. The door slammed shut and the vehicle sped away, vanishing into the darkness of the night. The comments were scrolling so fast I couldn't even read them. Everyone was telling me to call the police or go after them. I managed to shake off my attacker and rubbed my throbbing wrist. My driver was white as a sheet and shaking as he asked what we should do. I ignored him and pulled out my phone to call my head of security. David, Ava has been taken, I told him. A black van with no plates is heading south toward that old chemical plant on the edge of town. Track them and wait for my command. I spoke with total confidence. Once I finished that call, I dialed another. I told the police commissioner that I needed some background checks done and that I would send over the details shortly. My tone remained perfectly level. The comments were baffled that I wasn't making a scene. They realized I seemed to know exactly who was behind the kidnapping and that the location was right out of the original script. My driver spun the car around and we sped toward the industrial district. The area around the old plant was desolate, and the massive building looked like a dark beast waiting in the shadows. I saw a skinny man acting as a lookout by the entrance. The moment he saw us, he scrambled back inside. I stepped out of the car and started walking toward the building on my own. The comments were screaming at me to wait for backup and not do anything stupid. The old plant was cavernous and empty, lit only by a few flickering, broken lights hanging from the ceiling. The lighting was dismal and uneven. Ava was tied to a chair right in the center of the room. She looked at me and gave a tiny shake of her head to let me know she wasn't hurt. Lily was standing next to her, clutching a small knife. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably, her eyes were bloodshot, and her hair was a mess. She looked like someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "You finally showed up, James," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "You're the one who pushed me to do this." The comment section was a wall of text as people realized she had finally snapped. "She has completely lost it," a user wrote. They were terrified because of the knife she was holding so close to Ava's throat. I stopped about 30 feet away and quickly scanned Ava to make sure she wasn't bleeding. Only then did I look at Lily. I told her to let Ava go, my voice sounding like ice. She gave a manic laugh and started waving the knife around wildly in the air. "And then what? You call the police and have me arrested? You want me to rot in prison?" "I don't think so," she screamed. Suddenly, she pressed the blade right against the side of Ava's neck. I saw Ava tense up, but she didn't make a sound. "Why did it happen like this?" Lily screamed at me. Her face was a mess of tears as she hysterically demanded to know why things hadn't gone according to her plan. "In the original story, you loved me," she cried. "You were supposed to be obsessed with me. Why do you look at me like I'm garbage now? Why did you choose her instead?" She gestured wildly toward Ava, pressing the knife even closer to her skin. The audience was in a full-blown panic, convinced that someone was about to get hurt. They were begging me to say something to calm her down. I looked at her twisted, desperate face. She was like a pathetic puppet that had been strangled by her own script. Now that her reality had collapsed, she had completely lost her mind. It was sad, but it was also a massive waste of my time. I was just about to say something when Ava let out a soft, cold laugh. Lily spun around and glared at her, demanding to know what she found so funny. Ava tilted her head slightly, moving just enough to pull away from the knife's edge. A tiny scratch appeared on her neck. She looked at Lily as if she were looking at a disgusting insect in a sewer. Do you really think you're in a position to ask questions? Ava's voice was quiet, but it was as sharp as a razor. Lily was momentarily speechless as she stammered in confusion. Ava stared her down and asked why she thought she deserved an answer. She called her a fool who solved her problems with tantrums and cheap tricks like kidnapping. You are a pathetic loser who can't even function without a script telling you what to do. You don't even know who you really are. Ava raised her chin, completely dominating Lily even while tied to a chair. Do you honestly think you are on James's level? Why would he ever be interested in someone like you? You are absolutely nothing. Lily was paralyzed, her eyes wide with shock and her lips trembling. It looked like Ava's words had drained the life out of her. The color vanished from her face as she began to whisper that this was all wrong. Her hand went limp, and the knife fell to the concrete floor with a loud clang. All of a sudden, the building was flooded with light as searchlights focused directly on Lily. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the warehouse as my security team swarmed the room. David was the first one through the door. He immediately tackled Lily to the ground, while another man moved to cut the ropes binding Ava to the chair. I hurried to her side, and she immediately threw herself into my arms. I could feel her shaking, and I realized that her calm behavior earlier had been an incredible act of willpower. I held her close and told her it was all over. I looked down at the pathetic figure on the floor. Lily was being hauled up by the guards, looking completely broken. She just kept whispering to herself that she was the main character over and over again. The comment section was filled with Ava's name. People were saying that Lily had truly lost her mind, and that Ava's last words had been the final nail in the coffin. She destroyed that girl's soul, one user wrote. They were calling Ava's insult the line of the year, and saying she was the real star of the show. They were thrilled to see her win so decisively. Look at James's face, he's clearly thinking how cool his wife is, someone joked. As the sound of sirens approached, I kept my arm around Ava and led her out of the crumbling building. Behind us, Lily was still muttering to herself as the comment section celebrated her downfall. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars were everywhere, filling the night with noise and color. I could see Lily through the window of a police car, her mouth moving in silent, desperate screams. She looked like a fish out of water. Ava leaned against me and asked if it was finally over. I told her it was. We pulled away from the scene as the comments continued to scroll. People were celebrating the end of the cleaning girl's story and praising Ava for her strength. It was a total victory. 10 out of 10 for that ending, someone wrote. They were sending virtual gifts and asking what would happen next. Some suggested we head to the courthouse, while others said we needed some private time first. I'm just waiting for the bonus scenes now, a user joked. The car ride was smooth, and Ava finally relaxed enough to close her eyes. The small scratch on her neck had already stopped bleeding. I sat in silence, my fingers tapping against my knee as if I were reviewing the final details of a major business deal. This time, however, everything had been tied up perfectly. The comments calmed down for a second before they started speculating about my thoughts. They wondered if I was reliving the rescue or planning how to comfort my fiancée. Say something already, James, they urged. We eventually pulled up in front of Ava's apartment building. The driver quietly announced that we had arrived. Ava opened her eyes, looking completely composed again. The fierce woman from the chemical plant was gone, replaced by the elegant woman I knew. She seemed a little unsteady on her feet as she stepped out of the car. I walked with her as the cool night air swirled around us. I offered to walk her to her door, and she simply nodded her agreement. The elevator was small, leaving us in close proximity. We watched the floor numbers go up in silence. The comments section was already getting excited about the fact that we were in an elevator again. The elevator of destiny strikes again, someone joked. They were all waiting for a romantic moment and were begging me to finally kiss her. They were desperate for the payoff. Someone bet that I wouldn't be able to resist her once we reached the door. Ava was leaning against the wall and gave me a quick, shy glance before looking away. The soft light from above made her look incredibly peaceful. The elevator chimed as we reached her floor. The hallway was quiet, and a thick carpet muffled the sound of our footsteps as we walked. When we got to her apartment, she pulled out her keys. The sound of the metal was the only thing I could hear. She turned the lock, and the door swung open with a soft click. She didn't go inside right away. Instead, she turned around and leaned against the doorframe, facing me. We were standing very close together. The warm hallway light reflected in her eyes, making them shine. They reminded me of the searchlights from earlier, but they were much gentler now. She whispered my name. I looked at her, waiting for her to continue. I could see the relief in her eyes, but also a new sense of purpose that she hadn't put into words yet. She slowly rose up on her toes and moved closer to me. She was hesitant, but her intentions were clear as she reached for my lips. The comments section went into a total frenzy. They're finally doing it, someone cheered. This is the content we've been waiting for. Give the camera guy a raise. People were demanding close-ups and calling it a rehearsal for our wedding night. I could feel her warm breath against my skin, but I didn't pull away. When her soft lips finally met mine, I felt them tremble slightly. It was as if she were pouring all her relief and hope into that single moment. I kept my eyes open. I looked past her and saw the chaotic storm of colorful comments swirling around us in the air. It looked like a silent, frantic celebration of our moment. Finally, the real story, someone wrote. They were praising our technique and telling me to just close my eyes and enjoy the moment. They were begging me to carry her into the apartment and continue the scene behind closed doors. Just as Ava was starting to deepen the kiss, I decided it was time to act. I didn't respond to the kiss, though. Instead, I reached over her head and grabbed a thick, heavy wool blanket that was hanging on a hook by the door. I gave it a sharp tug, and the heavy blanket fell over us like a thick curtain. It smelled faintly of dust and the outdoors as it completely covered the both of us. We were completely hidden from view. Everything, from our bodies to our breath, was shrouded in darkness. The only thing I could hear was the rustle of the fabric and the sound of her breathing next to mine. The comments section exploded in frustration. People were demanding to know why the screen had gone black and couldn't believe I had used a blanket to block their view. "Where's our bonus scene?" they yelled. They were convinced I was doing this on purpose and started demanding refunds again. They were begging the camera to find a way inside the blanket. Under the blanket, we were completely isolated from the outside world and the floating comments. I felt Ava's body go stiff for a second before she started to tremble in my arms. She wasn't afraid. She was actually laughing. I could hear her muffled giggles through the heavy wool, and her breath felt ticklish against my neck. She tried to say something, but she was laughing too hard. I pulled her closer and pressed my hand against her back, trying to keep her quiet. "I'm blocking the comments," I whispered. All the noise and demands for content were finally gone, silenced by the thick layer of wool. She looked up at me in the dark and asked if I could see them too. I just nodded. She laughed even harder then, finally relaxing as she leaned against me. She called me a child, but I could tell she was smiling. I didn't say a word. Outside the blanket, the audience was losing their minds. "Take the blanket off," they screamed. They argued that if the script was changing, they had a right to see it. They were even threatening to report me for fraud. They were calling it false advertising and begging the camera crew to find a way in. They realized I had finally figured out how to get some privacy. All the content they wanted was gone, replaced by a black screen. They were so upset, they started talking about a protest. Then some users started to wonder if the black screen actually meant something more was happening. They were getting even more excited by the possibilities. "This is even better," one user wrote. They were praising me for being clever and saying that the mystery made it even more interesting. They were impressed by my move. "He's so charming because he knows exactly how to leave us wanting more," a comment read. Some were still angry, demanding their dramatic night back. It was warm under the wool. Her hair was tickling my chin, and I could hear her every breath in the tiny space. I could still feel the warmth from our kiss. Our entire world had shrunk down to this one small, dark space. There was no audience, no script, and no roles to play. It was just the two of us. The blanket had successfully cut us off from everything else. It was perfect. While the audience outside was still fighting and complaining, we were in total peace. It was so quiet and calm inside our little cocoon. I held her for a long time before I finally whispered question. "Shall we go inside?" She gave a soft, happy reply. I felt her hand find mine in the dark, and she slowly led me back into her apartment. The door clicked shut behind us, cutting off the last bit of light from the hallway. We had finally left the audience and their chaotic comments behind. The world was finally silent, and the screen went completely dark. A single, desperate comment drifted across the blackness, expressing total frustration that the story had ended. Life isn't a pre-written script, and you certainly shouldn't spend it living in the comments section of other people's opinions. Real strength is the courage to reject cheap cliches and maintain a clear-headed boundary amidst the noise of the world. When you learn, just as we did at the end of this story, to pull down a wool blanket to shut out the chaos and stop performing for the expectations of others, that is when your life truly belongs to you. May you take a firm grip on the steering wheel of your own journey. Refuse to be anyone's puppet and remain the most conscious protagonist of your own life.